Upon earning the Platinum Trophy in Tomb Raider Chronicles Remastered, I had achieved near total Tomb Raider trophy domination. I only had one Platinum Trophy left to obtain at this point. The Platinum Trophy of Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness. 55 trophies were in my way before I could claim this badass feat, and as usual, the trophy list made it clear that I needed at least 2 full playthroughs to earn them all. I was nervous, but also excited, so I jumped straight into the darkest chapter in the series to help Lara escape the police after having been framed for the murder of Werner von Croy. The first thing I needed to do was die. You see, to earn the Darwin Awards trophy, I had to find all the silliest ways for Lara to die in the game, and being killed by a chained dog counted as one. From that moment on, however, I wasn't allowed to get hurt by dogs at all, or kill any, for the purpose of unlocking the Good Boys trophy. I was then presented with something new for the remaster, a diverging path. I was basically given the option to go to the rooftop, as usual, or to go explore the newly restored back alley area. For the sake of collecting all health items and chocolate bars, however, I figured that I would have to save that back alley and the parkour trophy for my New Game Plus playthrough. I still got to explore a bit of this new area at the end of the level, however, where I found a couple of easily missable health items lying around. In the derelict apartment block, after collecting a key at the top, I needed to backtrack to the second floor so I could collect the Vector gun. You see, I needed to collect 2 Vectors and 2 Scorpion X guns throughout the game to unlock the 2 of every kind trophy. Once I made it to Margot Cavier's apartment, I had to be rude to the poor woman and steal all her stuff before the police arrived to earn my first trophy in the game. Lara may have been wrongfully accused of murdering Von Croy, but she still belonged behind bars for that. In the Parisian ghetto, I got an opportunity to take a look at Von Croy's notebook for the first time, which I needed to collect all entries for to unlock the Memento Mori trophy. More importantly, however, I got acquainted with remastered Janice.
Move along, ma chère. You make the place look crowded.
I wouldn't worry. We're not in the same class.
The objective of this part of the game is to get inside the Serpent Rouge and retrieve a box for either Bernard or Pierre, depending on who Lara approaches first. I opted for Pierre's quest on this playthrough, mostly because I really wanted to hear remastered Bernard say his catchphrase.
Leave me alone, I'm busy.
This didn't earn me a trophy, mind you. Instead, I got one for having looked at all 3 maps in the area. For the Cash Overload trophy, Lara needed to have 3,500 euros in her pocket, which meant that I had to search for dropped cash everywhere and sell, found valuables at the pawn shop. The boxing trainer at St. Eckhart's Church had a gold watch that I needed for this purpose, and for its own trophy, so I had to win it from him in a bet. Since the outcome of this boxing match is randomized, I made sure to save my game first, and then I just kept betting on Carl to win it until he did. After getting the trophy for winning this bet, I had to, quote, surprise the boxers for a trophy, but I couldn't figure out how to get inside the boxing ring. So instead, I climbed to the top of the church and dropped into the ring. After all that horsing around, it was time to get inside the Serpent Rouge and retrieve Pierre's box. Here I needed to stay undetected for the first half of the level pretty much, so I could earn the Hit the Floor trophy upon breaking the metal structure. I also got a trophy for opening fire on an enemy and then finishing him off in melee combat. After having vacuumed both the Serpent Rouge and the sewers beneath it for valuables, I sold all my crap at the pawn shop to get just above the 3,500 euros needed for the Cash Overload trophy. I then spent some of that cash on 2 weapon upgrades for the Pawn Promotion trophy, and over at the herbalist shop I spent some more on a poison antidote to get the Nehushtan trophy. I then handed the box from the Serpent Rouge over to Pierre so he would help Lara gain access to St. Eckhart's graveyard via his ex Francine's apartment. So Pierre got his box, Lara made some progress, Francine lost her sports watch, and I got a trophy. Poor Francine, she really got shafted here. Not by Pierre anymore though, at least. In the graveyard, I needed to collect a couple of health items while watching out for the patrolling dogs. I also needed to collect an item in the nearby courtyard, which required a really tricky jump to get inside. In fact, I found this jump impossible to pull off with modern controls, so I needed to switch to tank controls and do it the good old way. Strange. I then moved on to Bouchard's dilapidated hideout, where I needed to avoid falling into any of the level's 4 pits. The first 3 were easy enough, but the final pit required some very delicate maneuvering to get past. Anyway, I got the Lead Pit B trophy the moment I reached Bouchard, who I then goaded into a deadly confrontation for another silly death. Bouchard? More like douche hard. This was when the game's plot began to thicken, and so did the trophy challenges, I must say. In the Louvre Storm Drains, I used Lara's newly acquired taser on a rat, since I would need to electrocute 2 different types of non-human enemies for the Electrocuties trophy. I then had to speedrun most of the level in 5 minutes from the moment I turned the first valve until I turned the 6th valve. Which was tough, as the janky controls aren't optimal for a challenge that demands such fast and precise maneuvering, even with massively improved modern controls. But anyway, I eventually did it. I then blew my way inside the Louvre galleries, which I needed to complete without raising the alarm. So this was an excellent opportunity for me to try out the remaster's brand new sneaky corner shooting mechanic and earn a trophy. Fast forward lots of surveillance cameras, advanced laser alarm systems, and patiently waiting for guards to get into position for sneak attacks, I got my reward. Since I had found a second vector in the Louvre, I decided to have some fun with dual pistols for the first time ever in the Angel of Darkness. The fun was short-lived, however, as I then needed to make it to the bottom of the archaeological dig and take out the guard there stealthily, which was really difficult. This asshole kept spotting me no matter what I did. Aw, shut up. I eventually managed to get behind him undetected, but don't ask me how. I just got lucky. I then needed to unlock the door to the Tomb of Ancients without blocking any rings, meaning that I had to line up all the symbols needed for it to open without locking any of them in place first. I was allowed to block rings to line up other symbols, however, so I could put them all in position for one lever pull to do the trick. I then needed to get to the bottom of the Tomb of Ancients in less than 3 minutes for the Fast and Curious trophy. Turned out that Lara had to survive it though, apparently. On my way down there, I got the Electrocuties trophy for having shot a rat and a bat with the taser. Amazingly, I got the Fast and Curious trophy on my first try, so I'd say the margin for error here was pretty fair. I even had time to collect the health item at the opposite side of the broken bridge. I then had to knock the patrolling undead soldier down there into the pit, which I needed to do to all these guys for the This Is Lara trophy. Before leaving the Tomb of Ancients, I had to run the gauntlet without taking damage, and throw a sweet little swan dive in there for a trophy. In the Hall of Seasons, I visited the Sanctuary of Flame first, where there were 2 daunting trophy challenges on the line. I decided to go for the Play with Fire trophy on this playthrough, which required me to reach the other end of the sanctuary before everything got set ablaze, so I had to be very fast. In the Wrath of the Beast, I needed to reach the Earth Crystal without using the right ledge, wherever that is. The only way I know to the other side is the way this trophy wanted me to do it, so joke's on the trophy. In the Breath of Hades, I needed to collect all pickups and only use a total of 2 pillars to cross the pit. I couldn't just pick whatever pillars I wanted, however, since one of them had to be the one that opens the nearby secret area where most of those damn pickups are located. The toughest part about this challenge was the final long jump back to the exit, where I needed to wait for the pillar to sway towards it before jumping, or Lara wouldn't make it. Finally, I needed to complete Neptune's Hall without taking damage. What made this tricky was having to deal with an undead soldier right at the beginning of the level, and the underwater corridor of spikes of course, but I got there eventually. I was stoked about having all those elemental trials in the rearview mirror, but I still needed to not only complete the worst boss fight in the history of video games undamaged, but also in less than a minute. So I blasted away at the ghost and hoped I would be next to the Obscura painting when it collapsed. And after a handful of attempts, it worked. Before returning to the Louvre galleries, I made sure to swim all the way to the top of the now flooded Tomb of Ancients so I could collect the perhaps most easily missable health item in the entire game. It sure would have sucked if I didn't get the Tactical Medicine trophy later because I forgot to collect this pickup. This was when my Platinum journey took a turn for the worse. There's a special place in hell reserved for the more gas, more mess trophy, let me tell ya. To unlock this bullshit trophy, I had to complete the galleries under siege level without using a respirator to protect Lara from nerve gas, and without healing her. This meant that I only had a few minutes to complete it before Lara would drop dead. And as if that wasn't enough of a challenge, I also had to kill all enemies in the level, which not only was time consuming, but also counterproductive to, you know, staying alive. You see, it's crucial here that Lara's health bar is as full as possible once her breath meter has been depleted, so she can resist the nerve gas as much as possible. And what's even worse is that the trophy doesn't pop until after the level's outro, so you don't even get an immediate confirmation if you succeeded. Which I didn't the first time I finally got to the level exit. Because apparently you need to backtrack and search for some more of these fuckers before finishing the level, wasting even more time. I spent over an hour on this absolutely horrendous challenge. Lara then returned to the scene of the crime at Von Croix's apartment, where I got a trophy for killing Bouchard's hitman, the Cleaner. This signaled the end of the game's first half set in Paris and the beginning of the second half set in Prague. Which was very fitting since I'd earned about half of all the trophies at this point. In Prague, I really wanted to call local reporter Ludwig an unsavory little runt, but I had to be on good terms with him for him to be willing to sell Lara the Scorpion X gun. Which he did at the end of the level, for 800 euros, the unsavory little runt.
I also got this. It could come in handy. The Strahov is one weird place.
Inside the Strahov fortress, I needed to climb a stupidly tall ladder to earn a trophy that references one of Lara's video game colleagues. Although they didn't actually have to reference outside of Tomb Raider for this one. I also had to reach the halfway point of the level undetected for the purpose of unlocking the Silent as a Mouse trophy. Which I did. Poor Ludwig then got turned into fried little runt meat by the main villain, Eckhart, but I found a second Scorpion X gun next to his charred corpse and got the Two of Every Kind trophy, so his death served a greater purpose. I then had to use the rolling cable wheel as a shield to get past all the lasers blocking the exit without jumping or crawling, which was quite difficult as I had to switch from left to right twice and be careful that the mines didn't knock Lara into the lasers. Upon arriving at the bio-research facility, I finally earned the Good Boys trophy for never having been bitten by dogs or killed any. Instead, I needed to kill all the mutants in the big pod room in the bio-research facility for the Unnatural Selection trophy. Since this trophy wouldn't unlock before finishing the level, however, I used the statistics screen to make sure that I killed all 11 mutants before moving on. I did get a trophy immediately upon doing a handstand in front of the giant flower, however. I then witnessed Eckhart throwing his scientist Christina Boas to the lions, or to the giant flesh-eating cocoon to be exact. Lara would have to deal with mutant Boas later, or Curtis would, who tagged in right after I got the Unnatural Selection trophy. Guess how I feel about playing as someone else than Lara in a Tomb Raider game, so I dumped the fool into a pool of acid, and got the Darwin Award trophy. Towards the end of the maximum containment area, I found the game's final chocolate bar and earned the Chocollection trophy for not having eaten any of them. This would have been the most difficult trophy to obtain in real life, just saying. Onto Shakma then, the Proto-Nephilim. For the purpose of unlocking the You're Just a Monkey trophy, I had to kill it without healing, and without using Curtis's gun, meaning that I was only allowed to use Curtis's restored Chiruguai weapon. So when I succeeded at killing this deranged baboon, I got 2 trophies. Lara then tagged back into the game, finally. In the aquatic research area, I had to pull the underwater lever without feeding the Leviathan first for a trophy. So after getting a different trophy for swan diving into its reservoir, I had to keep my fingers crossed that the monster wouldn't catch Lara. Well, it didn't on my second attempt. So after the most pointless costume change in Tomb Raider history, I got rewarded for leaving a hungry Leviathan behind. In the Vault of Trophies, I got a trophy for completing the relatively sizable underwater section without help from the Aqualung, but since it didn't matter that I surfaced for oxygen on occasion, I'm not sure how this was supposed to be a challenge. I got 2 trophies during the boss fight against Christina Boas, one for dodging all her projectiles while also not attacking her during her shelling period, and one for killing her, of course. And speaking of killing, I finally got the This Is Lara trophy when I kicked the 17th undead soldier in the game into the pool of boiling water in Eckhart's lab. I also got the Tactical Medicine trophy the moment I collected the game's 70th and final health item. I then moved on to Eckhart, who I not only needed to defeat without losing health, but also without the infamous cheese method of dropping to the floor. This was actually super difficult, as one of his attacks seemed impossible to jump over, until I realized that I needed to sprint jump over it. I eventually beat him and got both a trophy for doing it in this lactose-free manner, and another one for, just beating him. And right after Karel was revealed as the game's true villain, I collected Eckhart's glove and unlocked the final entry in Werner's notebook, and the Memento Mori trophy. I then finished the game and got my reward at the end of the credits. So far, so good. After my first playthrough, I only had 5 trophies left to obtain. Besides the horror that was the more gas, more mess trophy, everything had been very smooth, suspiciously so. Usually there's a bugged trophy here, or a bugged something else there, but not here in the Angel of Darkness of all games. Which made me worry that the game's New Game Plus mode was where all the bullshit was gonna be at.
Save game here, using a GPS.
Save what here using a what? That's right, in this game's New Game Plus mode, you need to spend a GPS thing to save your game, and heal Lara. The only health items still collectible in this mode are the chocolate bars, but Lara can't eat them. So basically, I could only save my game and heal Lara 48 times throughout my entire playthrough. Great. But anyway, I went and completed Lara's training in the back alley this time to earn the parkour trophy. In the Parisian ghetto, I gleefully discovered that the herbalist had extra GPSs for sale. I had originally planned to just rush through this part of the game, but this discovery made me want to go search for all the money and valuables again so I could buy as many extra GPSs as possible. Before going on this treasure hunt, however, I headed over to the park to accept Bernard's quest this time since I needed to unlock a trophy tied to it on this playthrough. So after retrieving the box from the Serpent Rouge and returning it to the prick, I got the Pluie Noire trophy. I then went over to the pawn shop to get some cash, which I then spent on 6 new GPSs at the herbalist shop. Since I figured that I likely was gonna spend 6 GPSs on the Sanctuary of Flame alone, I thought this was a fantastic investment. And speaking of the Sanctuary of Flame, I earned the Rocket Woman trophy there for letting Lara dive off 5 blocks without taking damage. I burned through my GPSs like there was no tomorrow during the Hall of Seasons and all of its trials. I wasn't happy about that, but this part of the game is too difficult to be frugal. For that reason, and due to the nightmarish experience I had with it on my first playthrough, I decided to just blast through Galleries Under Siege as fast as I could, avoiding all enemy contact. When I began the proc chapter, I had 28 GPSs left, which I felt somewhat pleased about. One of the good things about this second playthrough was that I could do all the things that trophies prevented me from doing the first time, like being a dick to Ludwig,
You unsavory little runt.
and feeding the Leviathan. It was also a good thing that I got those 6 extra GPSs from the herbalist, because that's the exact amount of GPSs I had left when I began the game's final level. I would have had to do that level and boss fight in one go had I not bought them. Needless to say, upon completing New Game Plus, I got a trophy. I still had one thing left to do, however, before I could celebrate my final Tomb Raider Platinum trophy. I needed to start up a new game and collect that stupid box from the Serpent Rouge for the 3rd time. What's in that damn box since it's so integral to the plot? Anyway, this time I needed to hand it over to Bouchard's doorman. Simple. That was a pretty unspectacular finale to my platinum journey, but hey, I got there, and that's all that matters. This was of course not just the end of this particular journey, but also the end of my overall trophy journey through the core design era of Tomb Raider. So, thank you so much for watching. Take care.